And I felt the way that I was told at the time at Manchester United wasn't done as well as it should have been done. But
the way that you were told.
Welcome to the Big D Speaks. Today I'm going to be reacting to a little clip from Diary of the CEO. It's a phenomenal podcast, that particular podcast, so I recommend it to anyone that's interested in high resolution conversations with professionals in lots of different fields. In this particular clip, it's a clip from the podcast with David Moyes, the football manager who used to manage Manchester United, and famously he was the guy that replaced Sir Alex Ferguson. And in this particular clip, he is going to be talking about the period of time where he was sacked as manager of Manchester United. During this clip, I'm going to be making my comments, and also I'm going to be giving my conclusive opinion at the end of the clip. So if you're interested in that, please stay until the end. If you
like, you trusted the club to give you long enough. Do you feel like that trust was let down? How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I do a bit, because I feel that, I think that if you're putting in a new manager, you're hoping that you're going to give them, and look, I left a very stable job and a very good environment to come and do it. And obviously, I think when we look back, you would say, hey, there was a huge change going to have to take place at Manchester United after Sir Alex. And maybe, ideally, I think we were going to try and make it seamless, where there wasn't going to be too big a change. But there was a lot of players changing, getting to an age where they were having to move on. There was actually a big squad of players who had been incredibly loyal to Sir Alex, and suddenly they've got a new manager coming in the door, maybe not playing them as much, so they don't have quite the same sort of closeness to him, and still building up relationship. So I think there was a lot of that, and it made it difficult. But the thing I look back at business, and you're a very successful businessman, I always think you have to give bad news well, because you're the boss and you run a really big business like Manchester United did. And I think if you've got any class or any style, it's good when you get offered the job and you give them and you talk about all this. But I think when you're having to give bad news out, I think giving bad news has to be done in a good way as well. And I felt the way that I was told at the time at Manchester United wasn't done as well as it should have been done. But
the way that you were told you weren't going to be manager.
Yes, there was ways it could have been done better, and it could be made a lot easier than what it was now.
I've heard this from former players. I've heard former players tell me that they were really disappointed by how the club, specifically Edward Wood, gave them their send off. I think it was Rio that said to me that just came into the dressing room, tapped me on the shoulder, and told me that this was my last game, or that they were selling me or something. And that doesn't pay respect. No,
it doesn't. And I actually think that, looking back now, hey, you think to yourself, hey, it's life, get on with it. That's the way it is when you're in an industry, or you do that. But I still think that I think if you're one of the biggest sport businesses in the world, if not the biggest, you would hope that you would do things correctly. Like David Gill would speak and say hello to them, or like they would send a birthday card. So the same should happen if you were telling somebody that you were stopping them, or you were sacking them, or you were getting rid of them. You would hope that they would do it the best way they could.
How did you find out?
Media.
Oh, really?
Media phoning me, yeah. Lost the game at Everton, actually, and the media were saying, "Oh, no, you're losing your job." And I tried to make contact and say, look, why don't we meet up? You think you're going to, but it didn't suit. And before I knew it, they called me in the day after. And by this time, the whole world had known about it before I'd sort of got to know. So sometimes I think people want to get it done right, and I just didn't feel it was right. But anyway, from my point of view, I generally don't have any real... I don't have a gripe about it, because the industry I'm in means that this can happen quite often, and you don't get things done the way you want it, and you have to live with it, and that's the way it is.
In the wake
First of all, of course he has a gripe about it, because ever since he got sacked, He's been going on and on and on and on and on and on and on about how it wasn't done correctly. And this business about, he was the last to know kind of thing that the media told him and all of this, the writing was on the wall. He'd ran that team into the ground. What did he expect? A bouquet of flowers and a Ferrari? Oh, thanks very much. You're doing a great job. David Moyes took over the Premier League champions. Not only the Premier League champions, a team that won the league by, I think it was about 11 points the season before. That's a big gap. And he had that team ran into the ground by March the following year. We finished 7th that season, which was a record low for Man United at the time. And the only thing that had changed between then and the previous season was management. So I don't understand what he expects. It's not like he was unlucky that he lost a couple of big games and they finished 5th. He ran the whole team into the ground, a team of Premier League champions. So I don't understand what his problem is. He must have known it was coming. We all knew. So this idea that the press told him, that the press probably guessed it because everyone else did. Anyway.
This is probably one of the most interesting things that I personally pondered throughout that period as a Manchester United fan, which is when you go from the penthouse and then the landlord evicts you from the penthouse after, I don't know, 10, 11 months at the club. The weight of Manchester United, it's the most talked about club. It's the club that sells the headlines. It gets all the clicks. So it must feel like everything is about you in the world of football. Mm-hmm. And it's like a very public, apparent failure at home. You've got wonderful wife, Pamela. You've got 2 kids. What's it like at home?
I think personally, you're a little bit ashamed because you've not done well. You're not done well for your family. So I think personally, I felt I'd let them all down because, I had really worked, like I said, probably the hours and the work I'd put in as a young, I didn't believe I was ever going to be a coach, never mind a coach of Manchester United. But the hours of work I'd put in had got me to a level where I'd worked and I'd done an awful lot of hard work behind the scenes over the years. And then to lose it so quickly. So you get a job. And I said at that time, I had 2 or 3 really, really big clubs who were talking about me and speaking to me. But when Sir Alex came and made me the offer, it was very hard to say no. And then for that to go very quickly. So it was a bit like getting to the top of Everest and then actually starting to decline very quickly. So from my point of view, it was hard going home. It was difficult. But I've got to say, it's a bit like my mum used to just say, hey, whatever happens, you just have to get up and get on with it. You get on with it, you take it in the chin and you got away and, sort of sticks and stones, don't worry too much about it. But you're right, when you're manager of Manchester United, you're talked about in every continent, every country. You'll either be in the front or the back page of one of the papers. So, but that's also the privilege of being a manager of Manchester United as well.
What's the toll of that? If you were to warn me about the toll.
I think the toll for someone who cares deeply about their profession and wants to be successful and wants to do well, the toll for me personally at the time felt big. It really did. And it probably took me a wee bit to get back on the road a little bit without thinking about it. I worked really, after I lost the job, I said, well, I'm going to have to go and try and reinvent, find out more new things, keep current. Where can I go to find out what's going on? And I obviously couldn't go back to Old Trafford to watch a game, or I couldn't really go back to Goodison and watch a game. So it made it quite difficult. But I found myself doing quite a bit of work for UEFA. I'd done all the Champions League games, which was really good day. And I spoke in all the pro licence courses for the coaches, which kept me current and having to keep up to date with things. So those type of things kept my education and kept my knowledge and kept me going a bit. But I still think that when you you've been at one of the big clubs, it's always a miss because you realise the level they're at.
You said that the toll is big. In a very practical, real sense, what does that mean? Is it sleepless nights? Is it anxiety?
Yeah, but I'm someone who sleeps really well, to be honest. But I do think that it's very difficult when you lose your job. In our business, you're talked about a lot, so you have to accept it. And I'm part of it. You will be as well. Or if things go wrong or any of your businesses fail, you'll be current. People will have criticism. But I think if you're going to go into football management, then you have to find a way of saying, how do I deal with it? How am I coping with it? What's my mechanism? I remember thinking when things weren't going so well at Manchester United, I'd be driving into training. So I couldn't put on Talk Sport. I couldn't put on Radio 2. They were talking in. So I thought, I'll put on whatever music it was. And they come on the news and they were talking about me on that news as well. I thought, oh my goodness, is this ever going to end? Is there a channel that isn't talking about Manchester United in some way? But that was because it was getting closer to probably when I wasn't doing so well, and there's a lot of talk about it. But I think you just have to find a way of shutting yourself off from it the best you can. But the world we're in now for young coaches of social media, if that's what your world is, or how you present yourself, it's much different now. And in days gone by, in the early days at Preston, I'd look at the newspaper, and there'd be a letter page, and there'd be 4 or 5 supporters saying, "Why is Moyes not playing him? And what's he doing?" And that used to be where the criticism was mainly coming from. As you well know, now there's a world of it outside.
The thing is with David Moyes, I wasn't a big fan of that clip, to be perfectly honest. I've hummed and hawed about whether or not I was going to post it, but I thought I'd post it anyway because, well, why not? I've already filmed it. But the thing that strikes me with David Moyes is just a fundamental lack of accountability. Because I've heard him say since he was sacked by Man United that he didn't get enough time. That kind of thing. But he did such an awful job that there was no way he was going to keep. He was going to keep the job there. There was just no way at all. You don't take the Premier League champions by a winning margin of 11 points down to 7th and not get the sack. Now, David Moyes, all he had to do when he turned up at Old Trafford for his first day in charge was just turn up, keep everyone where they were. René Meulensteen, Mick Phelan, just let them run the team and just take a back seat and watch and observe, because that team was so finely tuned that if he just left them alone and didn't meddle, they'd have finished top 4 and he'd have kept his job for another 12 months. Not a problem. And in that time, he could have got to know the club, he could have got to know the players, he could have sort of understood the tactics a little bit more of what they were used to playing, he could have worked on transfers for the following year, but he didn't delegate in any way, shape or form, and he tried to get them to play like Everton. Why would you buy a Ferrari and then try and get it to drive like a fucking Skoda? Oh, that was the beginning of the end for Manchester United. I mean, little did we know that more surgery needed to be done. It did, because Alex Ferguson leaving not only left the hole in the coaching side of things, it left a massive hole in the philosophical side of things. So there was no one thinking of the medium to long term, unfortunately, at the time. Thankfully, we've got Sir Jim now, and he seems to be doing okay. But yeah, that was a very frustrating time with David Moyes. Anyway, what do you guys think? Am I wrong? Am I talking rubbish? Is David Moyes right? Did he not get enough time? You tell me. Anyway, thanks for watching.